You probably never chose your super fund. You started a job, maybe at 22, ticked nothing on the paperwork, and someone in payroll dropped your money into a default MySuper fund. And because of a rule called stapling, that same fund may have quietly followed you through every job since. You didn't pick it. Your employer did, once, years ago, and then forgot about it. Today, we're going to find out whether that set and forget decision is costing you real money. Millions of Australians are sitting in funds they never chose, and almost none of them have ever checked. So here's the plan. 3 moves. First, find out where your super actually is and what you're paying in fees. Second, compare your fund's performance against the official benchmark. Third, decide whether to stay put or switch to something better. Each move is free, takes under 20 minutes, and could be worth 6 figures by the time you retire. Here's the number that should make you sit up. An average 30-year-old on a $70,000 salary, stuck in a high-fee default charging 1% a year instead of a low-fee fund at 0.6%, retires with about $110,000 less, ASIC Money Smart and APRA MySuper data 2024. That's a 0.4% fee gap. It sounds tiny, but here's the part nobody tells you. Across your whole working life, that fraction of a percent compounds into a small fortune. 3 moves. Check where your super is and what you pay. Compare it against APRA's benchmark. Then switch to a low-fee, strong fund. Each is free and quick. So how does this happen? Under the superannuation guarantee rules, if you don't choose a fund, your employer must pay your super into their nominated default. And that default has to be a MySuper product, regulated by APRA, the authority that oversees super funds, ATO 2024. But here's the catch. The law only requires that default to be complying and MySuper authorised. There is no requirement that it be the cheapest or the best performing or anywhere near it. Your employer picks a default once, and most never recheck it. And the fees vary wildly. APRA's latest MySuper statistics show total fees and costs on a $50,000 balance ranging from about 0.4% to over 1.3% a year, with a median around 1%. APRA MySuper statistics 2024. That means many people defaulted into higher fee funds are paying roughly double what the lowest fee funds charge. And as Money Smart warns, even a 0.5% difference in fees can reduce your final balance by tens of thousands of dollars. ASIC Money Smart. Same salary, same contributions, just a quieter, leakier fund. Now the second layer, and this one's sneakier. Since the 1st of November 2021, a reform called stapling means your existing super fund follows you from job to job. Fair Work 2021. When you start a new job and don't choose, your employer checks the ATO for your stapled fund and pays into that. The idea was good, fewer duplicate accounts, but there's a flip side. If your very first fund was a high fee or chronic underperformer, that fund can now follow you across decades and multiple employers unless you actively change it yourself. And not every MySuper fund is good just because it's authorised. Under the Your Future, Your Super test, APRA measures each product against a benchmark, and any that underperforms by more than 0.5% a year over 8 years officially fails. APRA 2023. Take a worker stapled to a mediocre fund, returning 0.8% less each year. They retire with about $480,000 versus $630,000 in a strong fund. ASIC Money Smart. That's a $150,000 gap for doing nothing. Here's the myth that keeps people frozen. People think it's a MySuper product my employer chose, so it must be one of the best. Wrong. MySuper authorised only means it's complying and APRA regulated, ATO 2024. APRA's own data shows fees vary by more than double between funds, and some MySuper products fail the performance test outright. APRA 2023. Being defaulted in guarantees nothing about fees or returns. So let's put it together. On one side, high fees, about $110,000 lost over a working life from a 1% versus 0.6% fee gap, Money Smart and APRA 2024. On the other, underperformance, around $150,000 from a fund trailing by 0.8% a year, Money Smart and APRA 2023. And here's the part nobody tells you. These two leaks stack on top of each other in the same account at the same time. Let me show you what this looks like for a real person. Meet Jess. She's 32, a marketing coordinator earning $80,000 a year with $55,000 in her super. She never chose a fund, and she was defaulted into an industry MySuper product at 22, then stapled to it through 3 job changes. She's got 35 years until retirement, and she's never once looked under the hood. Here's what Jess found when she finally checked. Discovery 1. Jess pulled out her annual statement and found she was paying 1.1% a year in total fees and costs. APRA MySuper data 2024. Then she checked APRA's figures and saw top quartile MySuper funds charging around 0.6% for a similar balanced option. So she ran both through the MoneySmart calculator. At 1.1%, she's projected to retire with about $460,000. At 0.6%, about $560,000. Fees alone were quietly costing her $100,000. Discovery 2. And this one's a different problem. Jess checked her fund in APRA's Your Future, Your Super Performance results, and saw it only just passes, having trailed its benchmark by around 0.4 to 0.5% a year over 8 years. APRA 2023. Comparing 10-year returns, her fund delivered about 6.5%, while a top industry fund delivered 7.5%. Running a 0.8% higher net return through MoneySmart, switching would lift her from $460,000 to $580,000, about $120,000 more, even after fees. Discovery 3 was the one she never saw coming. Buried in her statement, Jess was paying about $300 a year in default death and TPD insurance premiums she didn't even know she had. APRA MySuper data 2024. MoneySmart warns that unnecessary insurance in super can seriously erode younger members' balances. If Jess trimmed that cover so premiums dropped to $150 and that saved money stayed invested for 35 years, it's worth about $13,000. ASIC MoneySmart. Small leak, real money. Add it all up. Fees, underperformance, and unnecessary insurance. Staying put in her default stapled fund risks costing Jess around $150,000 over her career. MoneySmart APRA 2024. This is modelled with the ASIC MoneySmart calculator on a balanced option. Estimates, not guarantees, but the direction is unmistakable. Doing nothing is a decision, and it has a price tag. So, could this be you? 3 quick signs. 1, you've never actively chosen your super fund. 2, you don't know your fund's total annual fee off the top of your head. And 3, you haven't checked whether your fund passes APRA's performance test. If any of those ring true, the next 3 moves are exactly what you need. 3 moves, let's do them. Move 1, find your super and what you're paying. Log into MyGov, link it to the ATO and go to Super. Then manage to see every account you hold and which one is your stapled fund, ATO and Fair Work. Then open your current fund's website or your latest annual statement and look for fees and costs, the total percentage you pay each year on your main investment option. Write that number down. This is general information, not personal advice. 3 steps. First, log into MyGov, link the ATO and open Super, then manage to list your funds. Second, note the total percentage fee on your main option. Third, rerun the MoneySmart calculator with fees 0.4 to 0.5% lower to see the dollar gap. What good looks like? Total fees around 0.6% a year or less. Move 2. Compare your fund against the benchmark. Head to APRA's Your Future, Your Super Performance test results and find your MySuper product. Check whether it failed or whether it's sitting dangerously close to the minus 0.5% underperformance trigger, APRA 2023. Then find your fund's 10-year return on its website and compare it to leading balanced MySuper funds. Any gap bigger than 0.5% a year is a red flag worth acting on. 3 steps. First, look up your product in APRA's performance test list. Second, find your option's 10-year return on your fund's site. Third, compare it against top balance MySuper funds. What good looks like? A fund that passes comfortably, not on the edge, with returns in the top half of comparable funds. Move 3. Decide whether to stick or switch. Use the government's Your Super comparison tool, available through MyGov, to compare fees and performance across MySuper products and shortlist 2 or 3 low-fee, strong performers. Then complete the ATO's standard choice of fund form with your chosen fund and give it to your employer, so future contributions go where you want. ATO. That choice also becomes your stapled fund for future jobs. 3 steps. First, shortlist 2 or 3 low-fee funds on the Your Super tool. Aim for 0.6% or less with solid long-term returns. Second, complete the standard choice of fund form and hand it to your employer. Third, log back into MyGov later to confirm contributions are landing in the new fund. What good looks like. 1 main fund, low fees, no test failures. Why does this matter now? Look at how the rules have shifted. In 2014, MySuper began. Default contributions had to go into an authorised MySuper product. Then in 2021, stapling started, meaning your existing fund now follows you between jobs instead of getting left behind. And in 2023, APRA's performance test began, publicly naming MySuper products that fail their benchmark, APRA 2023. Put those together and the message is clear. Stapling means a bad fund can follow you for decades, so checking once today matters more than it ever has. Once you've acted, verify it actually worked. You should see your new fund listed in MyGov within a few weeks. Confirm that your next payslip super guarantee contribution is going to the chosen fund. And if you spot old accounts still lingering, roll them in to stop paying duplicate fees and double insurance. Questions? Drop them in the comments. Everything today comes from the ATO, Fair Work, ASIC's Money Smart, and Apara. Links are all below so you can check your own numbers. So now you know how to check if your default super fund is costing you and how to switch in 3 moves. Next week, how to consolidate multiple super accounts without losing valuable insurance. If this saved you from a 6-figure mistake, subscribe. That's the whole ask. We read the fine print so you don't have to.